doing?
Yeah, so I disappeared forever. What else is new? Hello, my optimistic pessimists. It's been a minute. Sorry, I've been so absent. It's a little thing I like to call depression and finals. So, but we're done. We are finished. We are back. It is the summer and we can breathe. I'm doing much better now and I'm enjoying my job a lot more, which brings me into the topic of this episode. Before we do end up getting into this video, please make sure to like and subscribe to the video if you did enjoy it, as well as leave me a comment below. Do you have any crazy work stories that you would like to share? I would love to hear them. Of course, all of my social medias will be linked down in the description box below. I have simplified that a little bit. It should just be one link that will take you to my link tree. It's a lot easier than what I had going on before. Additionally, now that it is summer, make sure to stick around. I should be able to post more videos, and I will also be going on a very special trip soon with someone who's actually been on this channel before, a long time ago, back in the early stages of this channel's development. So, of course, make sure to stick around if you want to see that person again. Anyways, with all of that out of the way, let's get into this. So I don't have a specific format for this video, which is probably not a good idea because usually when I don't plan out videos, I end up talking for like 6 hours, but we're gonna try to at least get a little bit of a format. So yes, as I'm sure you have guessed, we will be talking about my previous job, which was a moment. So I kind of want to divide this into 3 rough sections. So like the history of going from that job to my new job, what it was like, sort of talking about my experiences and kind of when shit hit the fan, so to speak. And also, you know, now that I am at this new job, sort of what has changed and what's different, why I like it more. Okay, so the first section is history. So it's important to know that really one of the main reasons that I ended up with this job is because at the time I was still living at my parents' house and I didn't have a car. So wherever I needed to go, it would have to be somewhere either, you know, relatively close to where my parents lived, or it would have to be someplace that I could access quickly from the bus. And it was actually both of those things. It was like a few blocks away and I could get to there walking, you know, if it was nice, or the bus if I needed to as well. But usually it just ended up walking at the beginning. Also, for legal reasons, because I genuinely don't know, like, I signed a, you know, non-disclosure, whatever, and I genuinely don't know if I can share any information or not, and I don't want to find out. So I am going to have to be a little bit vague. But when I started working for this company, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't awful. You know, the pay was pretty decent, especially considering the fact that it was kind of my first adult job. Everything I'd worked up until at that point was like teenage jobs. This was like the first one, like you had to be 18 to work there, which we will get into that later because I did not know my rights and I should have. But yeah, the pay was decent, especially because it was like an adult job. You know, I was getting paid like $11 an hour, which is nothing. But, you know, to me at the time it was amazing. You know, I didn't have rent or anything. My entire body just stopped functioning. Wow. You know, I also relatively enjoyed my coworkers and my boss, you know, respected me and my opinion, which sounds like the bare minimum. Because it is. But, you know, because before this, everything I had worked you could have done when you were 16, I didn't really care. You know, for me, this was such a step up and it was such an improvement to what I was doing before, even though it really wasn't. Anyways, things continued like that for a while. The job wasn't awful, but it wasn't great either. It was just sort of a decent, easy college job that I could do without really having to think much about it, and it wasn't that awful. That was until about 6 months ago, I want to say. Not even. It was, I believe, right after Christmas when they went public. So before this time, this company was private, which basically meant that their stock wasn't on sale. You couldn't, it wasn't up on the stock market, which meant they didn't have sponsors. This is another thing I'm learning, is there's nothing I hate more than sponsors. I know that they're useful, especially if you are a YouTuber or you're running that sort of a business, because they do give you a lot of money. But it does also usually mean that there's a lot of different things and formats that you have to follow. And that was the case for this company. Pretty much at that point in time, things started to fall downhill. Additionally, because most things were sort of work from home, a lot of the people who I were working with, I had never met, and a lot of them were actually from the southern part of the state that I live. So, you know, they were like 2 hours away from me. Also, from what I've heard from people in my office, they weren't really liked that much by the rest of the company. The only people we hated more than them was the outsourced people in different countries. So if that tells you how much they were despised, and those were the people I was working with, kill me now. Anyways, I was working with them at the time, and we did end up going public, which meant there was a lot of policy changes, and as they kept coming and coming and coming, eventually I just sort of hit the final straw, and I was like, you know what, this is it, I'm gone, I can't do this anymore. So some of the main things were, I guess I have to give you a little bit of context of what I did for this. I worked in a lot of customer solutions, so a lot of troubleshooting things is what I was doing. I wanted to show you the screenshots because they're shocking to see. Unfortunately, I couldn't find them. I could have sworn I brought them over to my personal computer before I left the company, but I can't find them. And I have no way of accessing them now. When I left the company, pretty much everything was gone, like that. I lost access to everything, which I mean, I'm not mad about, because, you know, fuck them, but that part would have been nice. So basically the story goes, I was helping a customer who was really escalated about a piece of equipment. It was a thermostat. That's part of the thing we work about. We have, you know, we have a lot of like smart home, like innovation stuff, as well as other things as well. So it was a thermostat, was really angry, couldn't really get it working. The only way I was basically able to calm her down and get her to stop is I was like, okay, you know, I can go ahead, go to like just Best Buy or something, get the cheapest thermostat you can find, and then I will, you know, call you back in about an hour and I'll help you get that set up. And that was really the only way that I could get her to calm down, because the fastest we would have been able to get one of ours to her was 24 hours, but she was not having. So I told her that, and but basically a supervisor told me that that was completely against the rules. If I actually did go through with that call, they would have fired me, as well as sending that customer an email explaining the situation and that I would not be helping. Obviously, I was not going to stand up for that. I spent an hour. This was the only way I could calm this customer down, and now my performance specialist, mind you, not my supervisor, tells me that that's not okay. Well, most of the people, I was in office at the time, and there were a few other people who were as well, and most of them were supervisors. I explained to them the situation. Every single one unanimously agreed that I was in the right and he was in the wrong, so I went ahead and did it, and I explained the situation to him. Obviously, he was mad, and what makes it even worse is, and this is all like basically recapping the screenshots, because this all happened during text, because again, he was out of office. They basically said that they wanted to pull me aside in a meeting to explain why what I did was wrong. And I was like, well, shouldn't my supervisor be here for that? And he said, yes, he'll be there too. Guess who he agreed with? Not me. Anyways, I ended up emailing their boss's boss, sending her all of the pictures and explained what happened. And guess who got in trouble? Not me, bitch. Not me. I knew I was in the right. I would also like to add in the fact that this performance specialist I was talking about used to be a supervisor, but basically got forcibly like sent down to performance specialist because he refused to admit that the COVID, like everything that was going on was real, and like wouldn't wear a mask and stuff like that. And that like their boss's boss, who I talked to, actually nominated me for and got me an award that month. They do like an award every month for like outstanding customer support. And I got that award, so who's laughing now? Anyways, that was first of many, many times that this happened. Pretty much after that, I stopped going through them, and I ended up talking to the people on the floor. I pretty much got their approval for everything, and I went in through, we had like our own line of supervisors who weren't attached to anybody for, you know, if your supervisor for whatever reason wasn't available. Usually because they were taking an escalation or they were on a meeting with someone else, which mine never was, by the way. Like, they didn't do their job because they were from Southern Utah and they were lazy. Anyways, that's beside the point. I started going through them, and obviously my supervisors were not too happy about that. Oh, and another thing about the story, they said that they would rather have that customer escalate than for me to have done what I did. They would rather have the customer scream and get angry and ended up having to be sent over to a supervisor, which wouldn't have been my supervisor, by the way. They would have made me send it to another one because that's what they did constantly. And I would have, yeah, they would have rather had me send it up to them than for me to do what I did, calm down the situation, keep this customer with the company, and, you know, possibly have got this customer to be a little more trusting, which at that point in time they weren't. Understandably, our company sucked. That was fun. That started going down, which was a mess. Anyways, similar things happened for a while. I would keep going around them and doing what I needed to do, which they didn't like very much because then it basically ended up that I got all of the recognition and praise while they didn't, which was the main reason they were like not helping, and they were basically like, you have to do these things, because they knew exactly what they were doing. You know, they weren't smart enough to be good humans, but they were smart enough to realize that if we did what they told us to do, then the customer would get angry, which would mean they'd have to get sent up to them, which would make them look good and us look bad. Yeah, pretty fucked up. Went on like this for a while. For some reason that didn't break me. I don't know why it didn't. It should have. I should have left. Anyways, we go on. This was the thing that did. Something happened, policy change, whatever. Basically, people were mad that our calls were taking longer than they should have. Gee, I wonder why. Anyways, basically said that if you can't start decreasing your call times, we're going to fire you. Take in mind, our department was so understaffed, customers were waiting on the phones for 45 minutes. They then went on to say that the reason was because all of the third-party people were outperforming us. They were not outperforming us. They were manipulating their stats to make themselves look better. I put in my resignation notice and I left that daggum company. This takes me to literally like a month ago. I left them and went somewhere else that, although they did pay a little bit less, it was a much smaller company. After working there, everyone was so great. They were much more willing to work with me and my schedule, and my boss was like an amazing human being. Like, I love her to death. She's great. And, you know, it fit my major better. It makes me so much more happier. My mental health is greater. And even though they're paying me about $1 less than what I was getting before, I'm getting more money because I'm actually willing to work more. At this other job, I was working exactly 20 hours a week, and it was just 4 hours every day. I'd get in at exactly when my shift started, and I would leave the split second it ended. No extra time was spent at that job. Which, let me tell you, I was very good at it, because even if I was just a minute late, they basically would have marked it down as an unexcused tardy. And I don't think I mentioned this, but it was a call center. I figured you'd guess it, but oops. So now you're an adult. What not to fall for. I took this job because it looked like the pay was great and it was close by. And although the pay was great, there was a reason for that. Know that in a lot of jobs, if the pay seems good to be true for what it is, there's a reason. Either it's because that's based on average commission, which means it's sales, which is super common in Utah. Missionary culture is great for being a sales associate, door to door. Or, it's that high because the job sucks so bad, they have to pay you a bunch of money to get you to go there, which was true for this job, let me tell you. Also, know what you're good at, know what you can do. I'm a lot better at dealing with screaming autistic kids than screaming adults. And I would much rather do the first, which, seems crazy to a lot of people. But even just so far in the first week of working where I am now, feels better than the first week of my past job. Also, know your rights. Because the things that this job did left me absolutely shocked. So one of the main things that was the biggest problem I had is you were watched constantly. And I mean constantly. Pretty much from the second that I walked through the door to the second I left, they knew every single thing that happened, and even afterwards. I do know that they followed my social media, strictly because one time I posted a comment to a YouTube video that had not even 100 views, basically talking about Vivint, and I left a fairly neutral response. Obviously I got written up for it because they're a psychopath of a company who gets mad at you unless you basically compare them to God, which I wasn't going to do because they weren't God. But yeah, that basically meant that they had to be monitoring that as well. But I walked through and there were cameras everywhere so they could see what was going on. They could see what you were clocked in as, so they could see if you were in a call, how long you were in a call, and then if you weren't on a call, how long you hadn't been on a call. They monitored every call in real time. I know this because there were times where the second I hung up the phone, I got a report from something I did wrong in that call. The only way for them to be able to do that is if someone was actively monitoring the call. And usually it was my boss. So yeah, basically everything was monitored, which is like, absolutely not. And I would even understand if they pulled random calls here and there, or they even had them saved, because, that does make sense, especially if something legal happens, you have to be able to pull up stuff relating to it to be able to go through. And I know that that was also something that came in a little later, and I think that might have just been with this boss, because he hated me for good reason, because I wasn't letting him get away with his bullshit. This was when I was later on and I was starting to learn my rights and realizing how shitty of a job it was, and I tested him a lot. He literally listened to every single call and every minor infraction he would report. Obviously none of them went through, because the rest of the company liked me, because I was a good employee. He was just a bitch who was mad that I was showing the rest of the company that he wasn't doing his job. Let's take a little break to go to Indeed to look at this job and see how things are going. Who's out here increasing these reviews? So, I guess they must be monitoring these now, because I'll show you the screenshot. It's on my phone right now, so I can't, but I will include it. It's currently at a 2.5 listing. It was lower, it was like at 1.5, and when I started working there, it was 3.5. So, someone keeps trying to bring it down, and they keep bringing it up. So they say it's at $14 an hour. That is not true, because when I left, I was getting paid $13 an hour, and I had been there a while, so I had gotten a promotion. This is not, starting out, that's not how much you get paid, and they're making it look like it is. Let's look at some of these reviews. Oh, and of course, they're urgently hiring. Horrible place to work. They could care less about your well-being. The management could care less about if you were enjoying your job and more about numbers. Absolutely. When I was working there, that's all they cared about. If I wasn't hitting my numbers, it didn't matter. Customers didn't matter. My customers loved me and they appreciated me. But obviously, because I was spending so much time making sure my customers were, feeling great and appreciated in this shitty job and shitty company that they were forced to work with, I had to spend a lot of time making them feel more comfortable, which, They work you like slaves and are horrible about changing the schedule. Oh my god. The amount of times, every single time I needed a change, it was like I needed to move one day back, like half an hour. Next thing I knew, every single one of my shifts was different and I was working full time. Every single time. If you start with working Sundays and then ask for a schedule change after working there for 6 months, they will tell you that they will see what they can do and do nothing and give new hires better schedules over current employees. Yes. This is something that I notice a lot. When I first started working there, they, treated me amazing. They were trying to make sure I was taken care of and I was super comfortable. And then I got, settled into the job and everything fell apart. Which honestly just kind of describes Utah culture in general. Like when you first come here, you're like, it's great. And then you learn, no, it's not. Everyone hates you. They're just pretending to be nice so that you'll accept them. Basic call center, where you lie a lot. When I left this job, having to tell the absolute truth about everything was so hard, because I work with autistic children. You have to tell everything exactly how it is, because you have reports and different things to do. It was surprisingly hard for me. That's how much I lied. I got good at lying. It felt weird telling the truth after I left this job. That's how bad it was. Worked for a few months, first call center, back-to-back calls, all shift. Again, 45 minutes, the customers were waiting because we were severely understaffed. You have to lie a lot and promise things that you actually can't do a lot. Absolutely. I could do nothing for the customer and had to pretend like I was. Or you have to fix other people's lies like the sales bros out there promising people things that just aren't possible. The amount of sales representatives who have blatantly lied to customers' face when I have to tell customers, no, that is not humanly possible. And then they get mad at me like it was my fault. I have never wanted to murder someone more in my entire life than a door-to-door salesman that worked for that company because they were terrible. Very draining. The culture is sick, and many days I felt terrible working there. You are just a number and management does not care about you. Check. The money is okay, but overall it's not worth it. Horrible work with great people. I agree. But all of the great people are gone now because they left with me. We kept gassing each other up to leave and we all did. Also, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the very end says if you work in customer service, you have to have thick skin. And this brings me segueing right into my next topic, which is the amount of things I had to relearn going into this job. Did you know it's normal to build relationships with people? The hardest thing I had about coming into this job was building a relationship with the clients that I work with, because this old job was so bad. I basically went into work, turned off my emotions, and went on to autopilot. So to be able to go somewhere and have to connect with the kids that you're working with is so hard. Because let me tell you, you think that kids don't notice, but they do. They know if you're on autopilot. Kids are smart as hell. The amount of time it took me to reteach myself that it's okay to feel, it's okay to have emotions, and you should be connecting with people, not just your colleagues, but the people that you work with, because it was genuinely something that I forgot. And it was rough. To tell you just how draining this job was. Going into the job now, I basically had to reteach myself what it's like to work. I remember now I work a decent amount of time away, which basically means that I have to go on the freeway. And if any of you are from my state, you know that no one can drive, especially on the freeway. So there were a few times when I was late because, car crash. I remember the first time I was calling my boss, I'm so sorry, I'm going to be late. I'm just not going to be there in time. And I was giving her this big long-winded explanation and she's like, okay. And I'm not going to lie, that took me a minute because I was so conditioned at this new job that you weren't allowed to be late, that having a boss say, it's fine if you're late because it's from elements that are out of your control felt nice. I was late to this job one time, and even after spending hours explaining to everyone there what was going on, no one would listen to me and I still got an unexcused tardy. Oh, and take in mind I was about a minute and a half late, so yeah. Additionally, to have a boss that cares for you. I remember when I was first working there, about 2 weeks after I started, we had our first staff meeting, and I got a little goodie box from my boss, and I cried because my other boss didn't care about me. I was a number. Additionally, it was a nonprofit. Now, nonprofits can be tricky because a lot of times they can be kind of sketchy, but luckily, because of that, there was no one they had to impress. They didn't have sponsors or anything. The only people that they had to impress was the state and the parents. As long as the parents were happy, and as long as we were doing what the state wanted us to do, there was nothing we have to worry about. There wasn't any sponsors to impress. You didn't have nationwide media coverage that you had to constantly apologize for. It was nice and simple and small. I mean, my team was 11, 12 coworkers and my direct supervisor and my boss, and that was it. There wasn't this big, massive company that I had to worry about. Also, I was allowed to be a person. I was allowed to feel, and in fact, it was encouraged. They wanted you to be you, to think for yourself and solve problems your own way. They've told me several times that not everybody is going to approach the situation the same way, and something that works for this employee towards this client isn't going to work towards you. You have to spend time with this client and learn what is going to help and what is going to work, which is so refreshing. Again, at this old job, you had to act exactly the same as every single other person. Now I didn't. I could be me, I could be myself, I could act like myself, I could do what I wanted to do, within reason. It was nice to finally be in a position where I could be myself. I didn't have to worry about what other people thought. So, this brings me to my question, as why you should quit your job. I mean, do you love your job? Did you finally get to a point where you love the people that you work with? Cool, great. This video was just a fun little piece of entertainment. But if you were in a similar position as I am, and maybe you're fresh out of high school, which is going to be starting, as I know a lot of you high school students are going to be ending soon. Or maybe you have just recently adjusted into the adult world. Or maybe you've been an adult for a long time. There's better. You might have to look for it, and it might be a little bit farther away. But you can find what you like, and you can find what applies to you. Also know that what I do now doesn't apply to everyone. Over the time I've been there, they did a mass hiring around the time I was there, because they were just opening after coronavirus. And out of like the 8-9 employees that they got, 3 of them left. That's another thing that's important to know, is that what I do isn't applicable to everyone, and not everyone would appreciate it. Learn who you are and learn who you like. I want to be a social worker, so what I'm doing now applies perfectly into that. It's about as close as I can get to being a social worker without actually having a degree. Maybe working in the company I did before would be a perfect job for you if you were going to be an engineer or a computer programmer. But those things don't interest me, so troubleshooting electronic devices really wasn't my forte, and I hardly understood it better than the people did themselves. Although my boss liked to pretend that he understood it way better than me, and I know he didn't because he said some dumbass things. Moral of the story: know who you are, and know what you're worth. Anyways, I would like to talk more with you, but unfortunately, I have to go to my new job, which I enjoy and like very much. Thank you all so much for watching. See you later. Hopefully, it won't be much of a break this time.